The Cold Omaha Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to Procedurally Generated. I'm Henry Bell, and joining me today are Tom Schreier and Brandon Bowling. There's basically no news this week, but we did play a couple of games that we have to talk about. We're going to be covering a big shakeup in the Overwatch competitive scene, Steam beginning to pull back the curtain on game recommendations, the world's only operational Nintendo PlayStation, and a whole lot more later in the show. But first, let's get things started with what we've been playing this week. Brandon, Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, getting by.
I'm glad. We had a kind of a slow news week as well as a slow week in games, although we did have one big release, and Brandon, I know you were pretty excited to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about Prey?
Yeah, freaking love this game. Initially, when I first heard that they were finally releasing this game, I was kind of lukewarm to it. Historically, this game, over the course of like the last 8 years, has had a very troubled development. Even a couple of like reboots. This game was not the game I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to what they had initially advertised with Prey 2.
Yeah, well, certainly not what I would have expected coming out of the Prey series. I mean, the first Prey game was like a weird, like, sci-fi. You were like a Native American. It was like a Native American sci-fi fantasy, like alien invasion story.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a Native American sci-fi coming-of-age fantasy story with heavy, like, 3D puzzle elements.
Mm-hmm. And
where
lots
you're,
of
like, walking on walls and ceilings. And
it was actually a pretty cool game. I've beaten it a couple times. I wouldn't say it's my favorite FPS ever, but it had some really cool stuff in it.
Yeah, it was, not my favorite, but definitely one of the more memorable games I played. When somebody says Prey, I automatically know what it is. It's definitely not what I would define as a cookie-cutter shooter by any stretch of the word.
For sure. Now, the new one, however, is not really all that similar. In fact, I don't think it has literally anything in common except for the name, as far as I can tell.
And this might have changed or whatever, but I remember an interview like previewing this, and the guy was basically like, "Yeah, we used the name, but it's pretty much completely different."
That's the thing that's so weird to me.
The best way to describe it,
but
there's no inkling to this.
But what's why use the name? It's not like Prey is like some huge property. It's not like I heard Prey and was like, "Oh my god, I've got to get it." Like most people, I don't think even know Prey exists, the original.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's interesting why they use the name. I think it might be derivative of like the thought-provoking gameplay that is implied.
I mean, only insofar as it was in the first one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is puzzling. It's just much more open-ended, I think.
Sure.
In the grand scheme of things.
I mean, I mean, I would say this game is like kind of like a mashup of like Half-Life 2, System Shock 2 with a little bit of BioShock mixed in for good measure, and then some Dishonored. You know, it's a very I don't know if I would say traditional, nowadays kind of traditional BioShock-style game with elements of like platforming and stuff like that you wouldn't normally see in the genre.
I'd also argue that there's a little bit of horror too.
Well, definitely, like BioShock and System Shock both had.
Yeah, I mean the music is seems like it scores directly out of something. I haven't experienced something like this since Dead Space.
Yeah,
really.
it's real. The stings and stuff are so good, like all the time, because they have little like Foley effects that you'll hear when like skittering sounds and stuff when you're fighting certain enemy types. But I often get startled and I'm like searching the room and stuff to see if there's any enemies nearby when I just hear a random music sting. So they definitely do a good job with the ambient music.
They nailed the score completely well. It's kind of interesting. It's because I actually kind of agree with you ultimately that they didn't really need to use the Prey IP or name with this game, and it still would have been successful. But I'm trying to figure out like what type of message they were trying to send by naming it this.
Well, I mean,
because there's no relation between the two.
No. So I have some insight onto this, and I listened to this thing when Game Informer did their cover story on it. But just a quick search, I guess they were going to do Prey 2 in like 2006, like August 2006.
Yeah, I remember them announcing it.
Yeah.
And then
I remember being excited too, yeah.
So the long and the short of it is it went through like development hell. And in March 2011, Bethesda said Prey 2 would instead be developed by like Human Head Studios and using this ID Tech 4 engine. And then somehow this gets transferred to Arcane Studios. And I think the thing is they just wouldn't let it go. Like, it just seems like from 2006 to now, which if you think about it is insane. Like, they just have continued to like promise this Prey 2. And maybe it's just they got too tied into that and couldn't like wiggle their way out of it, out of the name.
I don't know what that means, though. Couldn't wiggle their way out of the name. That's not how IPs work. Like, they could make a fucking comic book based on the original series, and they'd be able to, like, they just have to make a product, usually, that's tangentially related to the intellectual property. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but it just seems... seems a little weird to me that, like, they basically have a solid original IP here on their hands, and they've associated it with kind of a mediocre first-person shooter.
No, I think so. I completely understand that. I don't think it's a legal thing. I think it's a promise thing. Like it's kind of like we promised Prey 2.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
listen, if Half-Life 2 Episode 3 comes out,
off the table.
It's not even a reboot, though. It's not a reboot. A reboot rehashes the previous story. It's neither a reboot nor a sequel nor a prequel. It's a different IP with the same title.
Yeah, there's no relation. Yeah, I agree. There's no relation from Prey back in the day to 2017 Prey. There's absolutely no relation.
Which is weird. But that said, I am really enjoying it. I mean, I just picked it up yesterday. I've probably put like 5 hours into it now, and I'm finding it extremely enjoyable. Like, this is exactly the type of first-person shooter that I like to play.
Yeah, no, I'm in love with this game. It works really well. I've kind of been waiting for this for a while. Like, it's very rare that a game makes me pick up a notebook and I start jotting down codes and like little things to jog my memory.
Exactly.
When I play this game.
You know, although fortunately, because of some of the quality of life stuff that they've added from older RPGs of the like, you don't actually have to jot anything down because they do little quality of life improvements. Like, if you get a keypad code and then you are at a keypad that you have seen like an email or something that had the code in it, it will just show the code to the right of the keypad, which is really useful. So you don't have to memorize quite as much.
Hard, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that said, though, I'm having a blast. I'm sure a bunch of you guys are like, okay, you guys have been talking all the way around this, but like, what is it really? It's a first-person shooter exploration story-based RPG. Extremely story-based. I mean, but I mean, hardly. It has enemies that are creepy. I wouldn't necessarily say that. Well, I guess I don't know. I'm only 4 or 5 hours in, so maybe it gets creepier. I don't want to speak to it. And we are not going to talk about, just so you guys know, you may be wondering, we're not going to talk about the story like at all here. This game, I'm just going to say this. I am really, really, really enjoying the story. It is the number one thing I'm enjoying about the game right now, and it's good, but we can't say anything about it. You just need to play it yourself if the rest of what we talk about sounds good to you.
I actually 100% agree, simply because everything from start to finish, even a synopsis on the game, I think would have a very poor effect on like an initial experience if you're interested in picking this game up.
This game is
usually
an
I'll say
experience.
something, I'm just not going to touch it.
But what I will say... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
You're probably about to say this actually. So the genre of the game does matter to me because I'm a child. Like, I'm literally a child and get frightened about things. So this is a serious question though, because I asked this before I played BioShock Infinite.
Do you think BioShock is a horror game?
So I haven't played one. I played Infinite, and I would say Infinite has one startling moment.
No,
but
Infinite's not even a skit. Get out of here. That's ridiculous.
It's got some weird stuff going on.
Stop it. Something that makes you uncomfortable is not a horror game. All right, so in this case, yes, you are too much of a pussy for this game. It's not that scary. It's got like some jump scares. It's got some like scary imagery and like scenes, but it's not like you're gonna have nightmares about this game from what I've seen so far.
The game kind of like, especially early on, kind of invites a certain level of suspense and kind of gets you a little high strung, given how the story and how you interact with your first set of enemies per se. But that can wear off as time progresses and you become more comfortable with however you want to play the game.
Or just desensitized to certain repeated type events. I mean, honestly, listen, you can handle it. I hesitate. I think that this is why I kind of reacted strongly when Brandon said it was kind of survival horror. I would not call it survival horror. I would say this is like Little Nightmares conversation all over again, where I'm like, just because something has a creepy aesthetic or creepy themes does not make it horror. Just because something is unsettling does not make it scary. And so I would say this is a case of there are jump scares and there's a lot of unsettling stuff, but it is not a scary game.
Interesting. I think
that's actually kind of interesting too, because I would say if it is unsettling and it has jump scares, it is a scary game.
I wouldn't. I mean, it's not. That does not make it a horror genre game, is what I mean to say. Sorry, I should use better language.
It's not derivative of the horror genre. It just has an element of
No, I was responding to your comment saying it was survival horror, and Tom's question of is it going to be too scary for him? That's why I'm hesitant to label it that way, is what I'm saying.
Well, it has different genres set into it. It's not primarily.
But it's primarily a first-person shooter RPG with heavy emphasis on story and exploration.
Yep, that's a pretty good good generalization of it.
Another thing I like about it is that it brings back a lot of traditional concepts like gadgets and stuff, which is why I said it has some influences of Half-Life. This is not a spoiler or story related, but I will say one of the first weapons you get in the game is the glue gun, which is quite a neat little utility tool / semi-useless weapon. Basically, it is a gun, kind of flamethrower looking, that you can fire globs of glue out of, which will slow enemies down and can even like temporarily stick them in place, but much more importantly and usefully can be shot on walls to create platforms and stuff that you can cross, like between two balconies, for example. You can create bridges and stuff.
You can use it to seal flaming areas and stuff.
You can even use it to just seal a door off if you're getting rushed by enemies, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a convenient weapon.
Very reminiscent to me of something like the gravity gun, if not quite as good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of want the gravity gun in real life.
No kidding.
Live without the gun. It'd be messy.
Are you kidding me? If I had a gravity gun, I would give it a week before I'd accidentally kill myself with it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, I'm not trying to clean up the goo gun's mess.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, well, that's the other thing is there is one thing I will say that it kind of feels a little reminiscent of survival horror is that ammo conservation seems to be a very real thing. And while there are definitely ways to get as much of a given type of ammo as you need at any given time, you definitely will be having to switch between weapons because you're not going to have infinite ammo for one gun, as far as I can tell. Which is nice. I think it's good to have gameplay that encourages variety. This game also has a Deus Ex style inventory system using like one of those grid systems, like Diablo or something similar.
I saw something. Yeah,
you have a lot of inventory management to do in this game. Fortunately, that is heavily assisted by the recycling mechanic. Basically, any item that you collect in the entire game can be put into a recycler and broken down into component parts, and then you can use those component parts in 3D printers that you have blueprints for different items and stuff, and produce, another copy of a weapon or ammo for a weapon or med kits, that kind of thing. And so even the junk you're collecting, it makes it so that you want to pick up junk, which is, I guess, a double-edged sword. But it's certainly something that I really enjoy, and I gotta say, I don't know why, but I absolutely I find it so satisfying to use that recycler. You just dump a bunch of junk in it, and then there's a sweet animation as it like spirals through a clear glass tube, and then a bunch of like component parts just come pouring out of a hole in the side of the machine into a bucket, and you have to collect it all, and it all like snip, it all get like sucked into your inventory.
Like,
it's great.
Definitely 80s in the sense that it's super convenient, but also like relatively archaic.
Yes, it's very silly, but I love it.
We're deconstructing something to its core components, and we're going to put it in a bucket.
Damn it, Brandon! I need to be given a reason if you're going to make me collect banana peels.
I just love it.
But yeah, I will say too, the presentation is spot on as well. I haven't noticed barely any slowdown. I'm running the game on Ultra on my system, max settings 1080p though, and I haven't had any stutter, any slowdown, any like load times are totally reasonable. Death and reload times are a little bit long, but I'm going to blame that on my aging hardware and the fact that I need to replace my hard drives pretty badly.
Actually, quick question. Have you noticed that when you die, like sometimes the death animation takes way too long?
Yeah, sort of. I've noticed that sometimes, like, I haven't noticed that the death animation takes too long, but sometimes I've noticed that, like, it takes a very long time for the menu that pops up to say, would you like to, like, play again or exit? Like, it's the death... It's the actual, like, death menu that pops up that lags for me. The animation is normal, but my character is just, like, laying there on the ground while I'm waiting for the would you like to try again screen to pop up.
I had one where I died, and I think I ragdolled off the side of, like, a ledge, and it just kind of flopped around for a bit.
That's great.
And I'm just kind of sitting here like, all right, I get it. I died. Can we move on?
Yeah, that is one thing I will say that is extremely Half-Life-y about this game is the physics are great because a huge part of the game is that, like, almost every single object in the game is a physics object that can be moved, picked up, interacted with, etc. However, the double-edged sword of that is that anytime you're in a room that has, like, explosions or something going off, and there's, like, a large number of objects in the room, you don't get slowdown, but you do get shit flying fucking everywhere. Like, it just goes everywhere. And that includes, like, actual collectible items. I had it once where I was fighting an enemy. I blew up, like, a hydrogen tank, I think it was. And when it exploded, it blew all of the scrap parts off of a workbench in the room. And I spent, like, 3 minutes trying to find all of the parts that were scattered, like, in all the random corners and stuff. So it has the classic overactive physics system that we've all come to know and love. I mean, I'm having a total blast. It's hard talking around the story, because the story really is its strongest point, I think. But I would recommend this game. I don't know, 60 is a lot for a single-player-only title, but this is the kind of game that has... I definitely can tell it fosters multiple playthroughs. The RPG system has a lot of depth, and, like, I'm pretty sure you cannot max out your character, so that also kind of leans into multiple playthroughs. It has... I believe it has 5 skill trees by the end of the game that you can all go into, so there's a lot of replayability there. And I've heard, too, that it has some branching story choices on top of all that. So this is definitely, I mean, you can tell it's an Arcane game, you know, the guys who did Dishonored.
Yeah, I like the environment that you're in, too. Like,
I do,
the way
too.
that the art style and how they make the areas look is freaking awesome to me.
I do, too, but I'll say I do get a weird, like... I know this isn't quite the right term, but for some reason it feels right to me. I'm going to say uncanny valley, but I get this weird feeling like I'm playing Dishonored every once in a while. Like, it feels like I'm in a reskinned Dishonored engine, which is probably what it is.
Reskinned, but it's weird how it looks, because I definitely can see where you're getting that feeling from.
Yeah, it has like a weird Victorian sort of vibe going on in the background or something.
The best way to describe the environment without, like, implying, you know, giving any hints to the story is it's kind of like imagine if space exploration was like a regular thing and now it's getting opulent.
Yeah, exactly. And just
like,
it feels weird. You'll walk into it. Yeah, exactly. Like, rich mahogany desks with, like, green glass, you know, shaded lamps and that kind of thing. Like,
nobody uses anymore.
Exactly, like stuff you'd think of in, like, the New York Public Library or something. And I'm just like,
exactly.
It's a little weird, but I get it. I'm okay with it, and it works with the story. But every once in a while, it just kind of takes me out of it a little bit, because I'm like, it's literally like I feel like I'm playing Dishonored. I think part of that too has to do with they have straight up just ripped the looting animation, as far as I can tell, from Dishonored. Like, you just suck items into your chest when you pick them up or whatever, and it feels exactly like looting in Dishonored, so that might be part of it. That's not really a weakness per se, but it is something I just wanted to point out because it was something I noticed a couple different times.
It's kind of weird because, like, the way that they weaved a lot of things together makes a very competent and fun game, but you can definitely tell that they've taken some pretty obvious influences from some pretty good places.
Definitely.
And I guess that can take away... It's a double-edged sword. Like, it makes the gameplay smooth and fun, but at the same time, you know, it can take away because you're like, oh, yeah, I've seen that before.
There are definite... I will say, it's a good thing the story is so good, because at least 5 hours in, the gameplay is not the most innovative thing I've ever experienced. It's very traditional for this type of a game, which is fine because we don't get a ton of this type of game, but it's something to keep in mind. You know, if you're not a fan of, like, the gameplay loops of something like the looting of something like Dishonored mixed with the level design and kind of repeated locations of, like, traditional arena shooters in single player, this might not be for you. But, if you're someone who multiplayer is really, really important, $60 might be a bit steep for you. In my opinion, if you like single-player first-person shooters, though, this is worth $60 easy. And if you're on the fence, I'd say wait for a sale and pick it up for $50, and it's well worth it at $50.
Yeah, I would say I agree there, too. Me, on the other hand, I typically abhor most multiplayer elements in games, so I'll definitely take this for the full 60.
Yeah, I would agree there. And it's worth noting, too, from my perspective, this is the first game that has, in quite a while that I've played, that has felt like it is right up my alley. Maybe the first one since Fallout 4 that I've been like, oh, awesome, like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been missing. This is what I've been waiting for. I'm getting a lot of flashbacks to playing Doom 3, System Shock, BioShock, a lot of that stuff, and it's all good flashbacks. So definitely enjoying the game so far, and I'm sure we'll be continuing to keep you guys updated. Brandon, do you have any last thoughts before we move on here?
No, I think we've covered enough. I don't want to talk any more than I have to, because every time I say something, I'm getting closer to like spoiling something. So let's move on before it gets real.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like,
maybe once you and I both have finished it, and if Tom decides to check it out, we can do a spoiler cast episode or something.
That would be super cool. Anyway, let me stop, because I'm already
salivating over there. All right, no problem. Okay. Well, Tom, curious, haven't heard a ton from you yet today, so you want to tell us what you've been playing?
Yeah, unfortunately for the audience, and we had this discussion off air, I've been playing the same damn thing.
God damn it, Tom. You fucking normie, casual motherfucker.
I honestly, this is the most honest I can be with the audience. I'm probably 20 minutes away from finishing Tales of the Borderlands.
And that's all we're going to say about it this week, we promise.
I was almost there, but I got to talk about this. I don't want to. I can squeeze 2 more weeks out of this. I know I can.
Exactly.
So we're going to hear about that conclusion next week, huh?
I was a tired individual. I will say this, because I'm going to try to be a good contributor to this podcast and not talk about it more. I will say this. I realize I made some weird decisions in that game. I'm not sure. I'm really curious, and this is why I want to play through it again, how much they matter. Because there's a lot of, like, this person will remember this, and I'm like, that was a really weird thing.
I would say there's between 3 and 5 total decisions that have a fair effect on the story, and I would say of those, I think 2 are actual big changes. The other 3 are more like, sense. Is a character present or not, that kind of thing.
No, and that makes sense. Like, I think I realize what the big decisions are, and some of them I could guess at the time, but because you have to...
They also, like, tell you, kind of, when they're like, so-and-so will remember that. It's like, thanks, Telltale Games. Sometimes I forget that I'm playing a game for a second, but you always remind me.
No, I mean, the only issue with that is, like, sometimes
Thanks,
I'm like, wait, do they remember that? Or, like, does that matter that I said that? And it's not like I made bad decisions. It's more like it was too real, where, like, sometimes I just say dumb things, as everyone on this podcast, or anyone who listens to it knows. And so, like, it was almost too real.
That's funny. I feel like if it was really like you on the podcast, though, it would be like you'd just be ... on every time decision.
No, I mean, that happens more often than I'm, like, comfortable with. And then I actually think, like, the game plays it really well, because you're this, like, corporate guy who's hanging out with these kind of rough and tumble, like,
God damn it, Tom.
artists.
What did you just say at the beginning of this show?
Rough and tumble?
No, that he's not going to talk about fucking Tales from the Borderlands again.
But no, this is a valid...
Give it a minute, she takes a mile.
No, but I was like, yeah, you know what? This guy, like, I think Telltale's is, like, me proof, which I'm happy about.
Yes.
I don't want to go too far into it. I think I'm assuming we're not going to do a deep dive into Hearthstone. Still playing that, and for the sake of this show, actually, I think Grand Theft Auto Online came out with something new, so I'll check that out this weekend. But for the sake of this show, Overwatch, I need more stuff. Give me more free stuff.
Damn it, you cheapskate! Buy some damn games. Not everybody's gonna give you free content every week.
I'm so.
You just listed
so
3 different games that you're annoyed that you haven't gotten a free content patch in.
I'm highly, highly annoyed. I also may finish Dishonored 2 and pretend that that's a new game for me.
No,
so that...
no, you won't. For Christ's sake. All right.
But here's the thing. I'll be fair. I have these moments too. Like, to be fair, like, me and Horizon Zero Dawn had a thing going for a while. for a very long while. Actually.
That is true.
So I understand where you're coming from. But for the sake of our sanity and your sanity, as well as our listeners, we should, at least, indulge in some of the new and unknown that comes out.
Sorry, go ahead.
I should get Prey because like my favorite games are Dishonored. I straight up BioShock I haven't played, but BioShock Infinite and like Deus Ex. And I know I'm going to be a freaking child and be like, this is scary. I don't want to buy it.
No, my actual concern is honestly that you're going to buy it, you're going to play it, and then we're never going to stop hearing about it through the rest of the year.
Yeah, because this is a pretty long. I'm pretty sure that people are saying if you just go straight through the story, it's like 18 hours. So I'm guessing a full thorough playthrough like I'm doing is going to probably take like 40, 50 hours plus.
And to be fair, and I think listeners understand this, like that's how some people play everything, but like I'm one of those people. I like, as every listener knows, I like playing games thoroughly. But some guy beat it in 20 minutes. Did you see that?
Yeah, but
that recently got broken. Somebody now beat it in 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, speed running is kind of irrelevant to the length of the game, though, especially because most of those are using exploits.
This is just people. These are people like going out of the way to exploit glitches.
Exactly.
They're not. Yeah, it's just which is fun. I like watching it, but it's not derivative of like the actual value and time that would take to thoroughly indulge. Well,
it's just different. It just doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on this conversation. But what I did want to mention before we move past Tom is you guys are probably desperately wondering how Tom and I's Hearthstone matches went last week. I'm happy to report, as usual, I won the majority of games, but Tom definitely held his own. It was very good.
In a quick update, I did get the quest for my mage, and I think that helped.
Oh, hey. Nice.
I want it for the beast. The thing that pisses me off, and I will not go into Hearthstone any more than this, the thing that pisses me off is I need so much dust because I really want it for the beast, and I really want it for the rogue.
Gotta disenchant cards, man.
I gotta what?
You gotta disenchant some cards.
Yeah, no, I've done thorough disenchanting. I have a very small collection of cards.
Be more thorough, because I have like 4 or 5 legendaries here, and I got one from a pack. I know you spend more than I do on this game.
I have created a lot of legendaries.
That's your real problem. Yeah, actually, you're right, because you have fucking... God, you have legendaries for days. The reality is you just dusted like every common you've ever gotten.
I probably should have more commons, but hey, this is life, dude. This is life.
Listen, you're the one with Jiraxis, so I won't talk.
Yeah, no, I hope we may, because I know that every podcast listener listens in for the updates on the Henry Tom epic battles.
The rivalry.
We may need to renew this. I have stepped my game up. I have stepped my game up.
Before you step your game up, I heard that you were making like lightweight suicide decks the last time you were overplaying.
it was honestly it called into question my some questions about my existence.
Tom, we outright played a match where I played a priest and you played a warlock, and somehow you got yourself down to 8 HP without me touching you. You start at 30, Tom.
Hey, I play to win the game.
Evidently not.
Clearly. I mean, it's not even like an all or nothing. It's like a nothing or nothing kind of deal.
Tom's like the professional sports player who like deliberately blows his shoulder throwing for a game just because he needs to win that one game.
No, I feel like it's more along the lines of, I refuse to allow you to damage me. I will damage myself.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
You are not worthy to grace me with damage.
That's great.
I feel like that's like what your game plan was there, Tom. Was that what was going there, or am I wrong? Or what's going on? You gotta give me some details here, man.
I played for keeps. That's all I will say. I played for
keeps. You just play. So you don't even. You're so selfish that you won't even allow. I won't attack you. You can't receive my damage. It's too good for you. I'll damage myself.
Tom exclusively plays taunt creatures and self-damaging creatures.
Like you're literally you're too good for the world, man.
Dude, I'm going to give Tom a little bit of credit. After I literally shouted at him for like 6 straight hours a week or 2 ago, he did add at least 1 healing card to that deck. So credit where credit's due.
I'm doing right things. I'm doing the right things.
I feel like at that point you're just a sucker for punishment.
Just a sucker.
I have a suggestion for Bethesda, and of course they always listen to my suggestions.
Bethesda? Okay.
Sorry, not Bethesda, Blizzard.
Okay.
Aside from give me more free Overwatch content because they haven't been generous enough, I think the quest for and I'm 100% serious, the quest for the Warlock should be beat yourself before they take damage.
Jesus. Just like the ultimate... How about this? If you're... How about a new legendary that's like, instead of if you have no if you have no doubles of any card in your deck, it's if you have not received any damage this game.
Yeah, no, I actually think this is, or you've done like 20 damage to you. I think that actually should be a thing. I think just as like a spoof, they should have patches, which it's like when you're at 0 health, you get to drop patches and it does nothing other than attack.
Oh, for Christ's sake. All right, we've gotten Tom to go full nerd. It's official. He's making patches jokes. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for our Hearthstone coverage. And Brandon, if I'm not mistaken, Prey is the only game you've played this week, correct?
Yeah, the only one worth mentioning.
No problem. Fortunately, I did play a couple of other things, although they were not new releases, because goddamn, Prey is the only thing that came out this week. But I went back because I couldn't play Prey, and Brandon was taunting me all weekend. I went ahead and reinstalled Fallout 4, which, holy shit, you guys, I don't even have all the DLC. Prey was 18 gigabytes. Fallout 4 was 85.
Yeah, but a pretty significant chunk of that is like that new high-res update that they made. That was supposed to, like, break systems.
But I would... well, I mean, of course I'm running that, but at the same time, I would expect Prey to have high-resolution textures, too. It's not an open-world game, so I'd expect it to have them from the start. I mean, for Christ's sake, Doom was 50 gigs. For that exact reason. Anyways, though, yeah, I did play Fallout 4. I reinstalled it. You guys know I'm a pretty avid modder, and I went kind of insane this time. I installed, I think, 140 mods for this playthrough, which is pretty solid. It's not like a record or anything, but I'm kind of being a little bit more discerning because I've now beaten Fallout 4 probably like 4 times, and so I just wanted to have like a really fun playthrough to check out some very specific mods. There's one in particular. Let me just pull up my mod manager here really quick. There's one in particular that I've been really, really enjoying called Sim Settlements.
Oh, I've heard of this one.
Sim Settlements is really cool. It's a weird settlement mod that you guys know that in Fallout 4, it's obviously it's a first-person shooter RPG, but in addition to that, it has this settlement sort of module of the game. And with the settlements, you're basically getting a bunch of survivors and building little towns that are hopefully self-sustaining once you get a certain amount of resources and stuff set up in them. What Sim Settlements does is says, hey, you know how every town you've ever made looks the same and they're all pretty shitty? And I'm like, yeah. And unfinished and have a population that can't support itself? Yeah. Well, they said, hey, you know what game did a really good job of like settlements and expansion and giving you kind of the carrot that keeps you coming back to keep building more and more? SimCity. And so, inspired by the way that SimCity does expansion and progression, he decided to create the mod Sim Settlements. And the way it works is, basically, besides the quest, which you guys can figure out for yourself to first unlock it, or the little side thing you have to do, it allows you to go into your build menu and create different kinds of plots, a la zoning in the SimCity games. And basically what it is you can get industrial, commercial, residential, or farming plots. And when you put them down, it queries a database of, I think it's like 100 at the moment, different house designs, and randomly picks one. Then, from within those random house designs, it picks furniture setup and randomly picks one. And part of the furniture setup is that they kind of tell a backstory of a character who once you assign them to live there. So it'll be like, this character has a bunch of jet hidden under his bed because he's an addict and like nobody realized or whatever. Or like, you know, you'll have a house that's really dirty and you'll leave the settlement and come back a couple days later and the house is clean because the houses change over time, which is really cool and not something that's ever in any Bethesda game that I know of. In addition to that, based on keeping different meters full, they've implemented some new settlement like happiness meters that are different from the traditional Fallout 4 ones. For example, security now is a much bigger thing, and different types of plots require more or less security. So say if you have several farm plots, you're at higher risk of being raided, so you have to have more turrets. And if you have enough turrets to keep everyone happy and feeling secure, your plots will upgrade to higher yield and like better food, which is really cool. And the same goes for houses, which become 1-story, then 2-story, then 3-story, etc. The industrial stuff, you get better returns. And because the game does have some higher than normal costs, because you're building full houses for people, every house has a bed, every house has shelving, all that stuff, and you have to kind of pony up those extra resources, they have a taxation system that then pays back out. And so you can actually make a pretty tidy profit. And I'm really, really enjoying it. I mean, it's easy enough to set up. The installation is fine. And, like, the functionality is really cool. And the potential future of this mod is huge because the mod author has deliberately designed it in such a way that, and even created a series of tutorial videos that other people can use to then go in, create house and different designs of their own, and then add them to the mod. And then he can just update the mod and all your new creations, including credit to the author of the design, are shown in the game when it just adds them to the randomly generated house list, which is really cool. It's like potentially, hundreds and hundreds of houses down the road. So, it's a really, really sweet mod. I'm having a blast with it. Besides that, running pretty much the gamut of regular mods. Let's see, I've got quite a few weapon mods. You guys know I'm a big fan of rifles and pistols if you've heard some of the older episodes. So, of course, I've got 1911s, Colts, all kinds of fun stuff. And then I also have some great improved animation packs, which I'm really happy about. They finally, now that the GEC is out, the creation kit for Fallout 4, modders have had a chance to kind of go through and do some of the stuff that they could not do before the toolkit was available. And one of those things is highly improved animations, which is great. So now, for example, I have a goddamn P90 in the game, and it reloads from the top like a P90. And it's really impressive because it's an all custom animation. Yeah, well, point being, like, they were able to import a whole animation where, if you guys don't know, like, I don't know, you guys are going to crucify me because I don't know the correct terms for guns, but basically the magazine, it's like a rail magazine that sits on top of the P90 if you don't know. And so you have to like slide it in around the sight and everything. And so like making a custom animation for that was scratch. That's got to be from scratch. There's no way that they did that by piecing it together from other animations already existing in the game. Very impressive. I've also got my jetpack mod, which I love. I got a bunch of HUD mods that like increase immersion or hide stuff when it's not relevant. I have Def UI, which restructures your whole inventory. Basically a whole bunch of pretty great mods that are solid for any playthrough. I've got an alternate start mod because hell, I ain't doing the beginning all over again ever again. And then besides that, just kind of pretty typical stuff. I got Radiant Cloud and Fogs, True Storms, all of the really cool weather and lighting effect mods, Darker Nights, all the typical stuff you guys know. But yeah, very, very, very strongly recommend Sim Settlements. I'm not going to lie, I basically reinstalled Fallout 4 exclusively for Sim Settlements and have been hooked yet again. Honestly, I'm torn right now between wanting to find out more in Prey and just enjoy the sweet mod that is Sim Settlements in Fallout 4. I don't know what I'm going to play tonight.
My question here, because I've just looking at some stuff online about it, is it's pretty reliable? Like, I think you might have said this earlier, but in terms of you haven't had any issues, like technical issues running the mod? No
crashes, no weird lag, nothing failing to work as it's supposed to. All the scripts worked correctly, no issues with installation or compatibility. 100% solid from what I've seen. And there's a whole series of really well done tutorial videos on the mod creator's YouTube page that you can check out if you find him on the Nexus. Again, the name of the mod is Sim Settlements, and the creator is it Kingath. It's Kinggath. You can find him on Nexus Mods. But give it a like, give it an endorsement, give it a download. I played
all the things.
Exactly. I played Fallout 4, and then there was one other game that I played, and I'm just going to touch on this really quick, but I I've been kind of binging Star Wars lately. I've been watching a lot of lore videos on YouTube, and I finally went to the trouble this last week of finding an episode guide to watch through the Clone Wars animated series, because I wanted to know the new canon stuff that they added, but I sure as hell wasn't going to watch a episode arc about Ahsoka stealing Stinky the Hutt. Or rescuing Stinky the Hutt. So, fucking, I skipped around. I only watched probably about, I'd say, 40%. It's the very popular Imager episode guide that I'm sure many people are aware of. And I actually really enjoyed it, but it really got me itching for some Star Wars action. And so, first up, I was like, you know what I would love to play? Knights of the Old Republic 2. And then I went, you know what? I could do one better. I'd like to play it on mobile. Then I went on the Android store and found out only the first Knights of the Old Republic is available on mobile, so I got the first one. I played it a little bit, had a fair amount of fun. I've beaten it a couple times back in the day, but wasn't really scratching that itch quite well enough for me. So I decided to, in case you guys didn't know, last week was Star Wars Day, May the 4th, and they were running a Steam sale on all Star Wars products all weekend. So I was able to pick up The Force Unleashed for $5, which was solid. I got the original. I could have gotten The Force Unleashed 2 for the same price, but honestly, I prefer the original. I think it's got a better story and just is kind of a better game overall. But yeah, I'm sure you guys know it. It's the Darth Vader's secret apprentice, Galen Merrick. You're going through and murdering Jedi and then trying to take on the Emperor. It's got solid hack and slash mechanics, amazing Force mechanics. It's super fun. I mean, for Christ's sake, at one point you pull a Star Destroyer that's crashing out of orbit and into the like station you're at. So there's some really, really cool kind of cutscene style moments, set pieces and stuff. But yeah, it's The Force Unleashed. I got it really cheap. It definitely did scratch my Star Wars itch, so I was happy. Just wanted to mention it because I love that game.
Yeah, that game is freaking awesome, man. I have so many good memories playing that game.
Yeah, I think a couple thoughts here. Force Unleashed, I think I mentioned a while back, was games with gold, and I like it. However, being the cheater I am, have not cheated yet and figured out how to get out of that one space where there's gas all over, and I could probably play the game and figure it out, but I will likely cheat. I'm just being honest with our podcast listeners. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing, did you run into issues on mobile with KOTOR? Because I feel like I ran into a part, and it may just be I can't beat it, but like I feel like there's something technically wrong because I'm doing the right thing and it is not allowing me to win.
I have not had a single technical issue with it. It's a pretty solid port. My biggest issue with it is that the control scheme is hot garbage and that the menus are kind of hard to read because there's a lot of text on a little mobile screen.
I love KOTOR. I really wish, kind of Mass Effect. I wish that they'd come out with a very, very new one because, like,
you do know The Old Republic is an MMO that's a sequel to Knights of the Old Republic 2 and, like, is a massively huge success, right? It's PC exclusive, I think, so you may not have,
will
you may have
amend my
missed it.
statement.
The Old Republic is the name of the game?
I will. Yeah, no, and I think I remember that. I will amend
it's actually
my statement
very solid.
as a console user. What now?
It's actually a very solid game.
No, it's really good.
Yes, as a console plebe that is cheap, I want a game that I can play on my console and not play a monthly.
Oh, don't even say cheap, because if you wanted to, you could. It has nothing to do with money.
Whatever. Listen.
It is voluntary.
Fine.
Cheapness.
I'm done indulging Tom just complaining about his lack of having every need satisfied. Stop being a whiner. Force Unleashed is solid. I did not have any issues outside of... I don't know if you guys have seen the control scheme in the Knights of the Old Republic port, but it's hot garbage. You know how most ports, they use the digital analog sticks? That's way too sensible for The Force Unleashed. In The Force Unleashed, you look around by just dragging the screen, which is the worst thing ever, and then you move by sliding your finger up on the screen. But Henry, you say, that sounds so similar to dragging the screen. Let me tell you, mystery person, you're totally right, and it causes massive issues constantly. It's really problematic. Thank God this is a game where you can pause time and set up actions. I even would have preferred just a tap to move to that location system.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's really strange.
So the recap of this is I'm very, very... I complain too much, but I am blown away that KOTOR, which at one point probably used a ton of computer power, Like, literally, I look at it and I'm like, this is a sweet game, regardless of its issues. It is a sweet game that you can play on your phone.
Dude,
and that blows my mind.
You know what did that for me was when I got San Andreas on my phone. I have San Andreas, which is a game that I played, I think, late middle school, early high school? I mean, I played that young and on an Xbox, and like, it's not just a port to phone, it's a port with improvements. Like, it's got higher quality textures and stuff, which cracks me up. Actually, KOTOR is the same way, I'll say. They definitely up-resed those textures, and it looks like they added in like some better facial animation and stuff too. Like, I definitely noticed they cleaned stuff up in that port.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I don't want to go on and on about a 5-year-old game for any longer, but I just wanted to mention that it is something I played since we didn't have a ton of options this week.
Yeah, actually, I want to make a quick announcement, actually.
Oh my god, he's getting... what's up?
I'm so excited for this.
Now, so, last month, Bayonetta finally released.
Hell
PC,
yeah.
Right? And that is like one of the most dank games ever. So, I've never played that game, and I never really was very interested, but I still like the concept. I played a little bit on a friend's console back in the day, but I just recently found out that another game that's basically Bayonetta for sci-fi junkies is coming out, which is Vanquish. And Vanquish was a console exclusive, which basically allows you to stop time and just do baller-ass things, and then you could even speed up time. So I'm super excited for that.
Nice.
That's coming out on the 25th of May. So if you are a sucker for Bayonetta and you want basically the same thing except with a sci-fi vibe, definitely look into it. It's going to be $20. And if you already own Bayonetta, there's a 25% discount.
Also, if you haven't gotten Bayonetta yet, get Bayonetta.
Yeah, you should do that.
Because for real, it's like cool. Maybe the best spectacle fighter since God of War.
Yeah, man.
It's good. It's real good. Anyways, though, that is pretty much going to do it for what we've been playing this week. So we're going to take a quick break here, but don't go anywhere because we're going to be right back with the news, what little there is. And we are back. All right, so let's jump right into what little news we have here. First story on the docket today is some trouble in the competitive Overwatch scene. This is pretty interesting. In the last 7 days, 5 pro gaming teams have dropped out of the Overwatch League, which is pretty interesting. If you guys remember, the Overwatch League is the Blizzard-run sort of national Overwatch League type thing. Like, this is the one that's supposed to be comparable to professional sports in the U.S., like a hockey or baseball or football league. And basically, it's got a little bit higher buy-ins, but it's supposed to be more organized. I think that they're trying to do like locational-based stuff, all of that. But unfortunately, while Blizzard seems to have quite a bit of confidence in their product, it sounds like a lot of the pro players and their managers do not. It's kind of crazy, actually. Let's see. The teams that left are Complexity and also, oh my goodness, Solo Mid and Red Reserve and Denial. Holy shit. And most recently, Splice. And in case you recognized probably like 3 of those names, like just off the top of your head, that's 3 extremely big esports teams that have pulled out. And they're basically just saying they're going to stop doing Overwatch League spots. They're not going to be interested in the Overwatch League, and they're kind of curious about Overwatch as in general as a competitive game, like what kind of legs it has. Tom, I'm kind of curious, you're kind of our resident sports fan and stuff. Like, what do you think about this? How does this compare to anything? Like, I assume you don't see 5 pro sports teams just fold in a week ever, but like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Actually, 2 owners, Robert Kraft of the Patriots and Stephen Ross of the Dolphins, were mentioned in this, and I know that a lot of NBA teams are buying in. Look, if they're not like doing this professionally, maybe is the wrong word, but if they don't have good practices, it will be detected. Because as you notice, I mean, even like the MLS, which is probably your 5th it is the 5th biggest sports league, has standards. Like when Minnesota joined that's the pro soccer for people that don't know. They had to show stability that like, you're not going to have a team in Minnesota and then all of a sudden in 2 years it moves to,
Yeah, wherever. That'd be ridiculous if there was some other team called the Lakers or something.
Yeah, I mean there were serious issues.
He said sarcastically, "Please God."
Right. No, I mean, but in all seriousness too, there's also standards like with that's actually really funny. With United, there's other United teams and stuff. But like I said, I mean, all that stuff is very fully vetted. They had to show that they were going to build a stadium and all this. I understand with these teams, it's different. There's way more. It's probably more akin to college sports, but that still has standards. Like the NCAA has issues, but it's very rare. It was a huge deal when Alabama, I forget which, obviously not the actual Alabama, but like Alabama Birmingham or something like that, dropped. It was a huge deal when they dropped out of that, and it's a really big deal even at the high school level. I hear. Well,
and I want to just to clarify really quick. This is the when I say like Team Solo Mid is pulling out. That's like I don't know what the Patriots, but that's like one of the top contenders pulling out of a sport. Like this isn't just like a high school or a college team here folding. This is a very big deal. These are some of the biggest names in esports. Yeah, these are AAA teams. And
it's like the equivalent of like the Cowboys or the Patriots or the Steelers. Just like, oh, we're done.
Yeah. And they're saying it's a combination of the cost of entry being too high and concerns about like the legs for the league. The biggest one though is really the costs, which is interesting because you brought up that there are professional, traditional sports owners who are buying into this, and I have to wonder how much of these, high barriers to entry are being put up because there is a lot of potential money to be made off of these, insanely rich team owners that already run very expensive teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the flip side, look, these owners go through this. Like a lot of these people, there are just very few very wealthy people in the world that can, afford these teams. And a lot of them, the guy who owns Arsenal owns the Colorado Avalanche and a few other sports teams. These guys go through occasionally contraction, but often expansion. It sounds ridiculous, but the NHL is adding a Vegas team, right? All these owners who are in the NHL know how an expansion works, right? And I think that if really you don't want to mess around with these guys, especially like a Robert Kraft, but you don't want to mess around with anyone. Listen, but it has to be run like a pro sports league. Like that's how it has to be run. And if you don't do your business like that, you're going to miss out on.
Why?
Well, I think if Overwatch wants.
But why does it have to be run like? Overwatch already pulls in more viewers at its major tournaments than many major sporting events. Why does it need to change? Just out of curiosity.
No. But I think that's exactly it. I think if you want the investment up front, if you want good ownership, and really if you look at it, I know this is simplifying a little bit, but a big reason why the Patriots are good is because they have really good ownership. And you look at bad teams in professional sports, it's because they have bad owners. Would be like if anyone would recognize something like the Clippers and Donald Sterling, if you guys know that story. Like, the way I look at it, you want people, especially at the ownership level, that that are willing to spend, that have the capital, all that. And I think if it's seen as kind of, I understand the viewership, and I think this is why it's actually really important. I think you have to. It can't be Bush League. Like you have to. It sounds like
I'm a little confused only because like Team Solo Mid ain't no Bush League team, yo. Like they bring in they win tournaments with $1 million prize pools.
No. So I think the misunderstanding there is the Overwatch League cannot operate like that. Like they have to have.
I see.
People. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Fair enough.
Sorry, to be very clear, the Overwatch League needs to be run with the professionalism. NFL has its issues, but of the NFL, MLB, NBA. You know what I mean? I think it has to be run with professionalism and kind of draw from the same kind of crowd, right? I mean, you want NBA owners to be in this because there's cross-promotional. You got really wealthy people.
Yeah, I guess. I'll be honest. I don't need cross-promotion in my shit. I'm not interested in... You're not going to be attracting gamers to basketball because a basketball owner owns an esports team. You might have basketball players who also play video games that cross over, but I doubt you're going to have people who, I never watched, the NBA, but as soon as this NBA owner bought my favorite Overwatch team, I suddenly became a diehard fan. I don't quite get the appeal of having crossover there. I don't know, but maybe that's just... I like that there haven't been... I like that the commercial interests in esports right now are basically advertisers, are sponsoring people. The players are getting paid. I wish they got paid a little more, which I do realize that having owners and like costs and stuff associated with the league would assist with that. But I also like that it isn't some super hyper corporate cross-promotion based branding nonsense that modern sports have become.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some legitimate. I think you're issuing legitimate complaints. The one
they're
example
concerns,
I can think of,
to be clear, not complaints. I am excited at the potential of this league. I just have some reservations.
No, I think so. The biggest example I can think of some sort of cross promotion working well is that going back to the N64 days, Nintendo had an ownership stake in the Mariners. They brought in Ichiro, this big time Japanese player, and they found a way at the time. The Mariners, who they're the only team to spend $100 million on their payroll and lose 100 games. They're
Damn.
not good. And they found a way though to get kind of the Japanese crowd into their team, and just kind of to get kind of anyone who played Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. I know there is anecdotal evidence of people going, look, I wasn't really a Mariners fan, but then I got into it because they had the game and it has Nintendo attached. And at one point, I think you could use your one of your handhelds, like your DS. To track
fine.
stats.
Okay. Listen. Fine. Maybe there's some crossover. I don't think that advertising crossover is the benefit of having pro sports teams, but sure, maybe there's some crossover.
I think you want those owners. I think it's a good thing, for example, for the NHL to have the owner of Arsenal, which is this huge soccer team that has a following in the U.S., to have that guy own the Avalanche, right?
I guess maybe you're right. I think it's a little different, but I guess maybe you're right. I guess I just worry because I think of a lot of sports team owners that have owned esports teams have not done a great job running the teams. They try to run them in their way, and esports kind of have an established, not business model per se, but way that things are done. And I also just think of things like, the Kingdoms of Amalur fiasco. That was a pro sports, millionaire making a game.
Very good point. Kurt Schilling, look up Kurt Schilling, just Google him, and you will understand he has some faults beyond that studio that may have been he is not an incredibly great person, and I think that
fair
may
enough.
Have
I would say, and maybe I'm being cynical here, but I would say in general, the kind of people who own sports teams are not in general always the best people.
No. That is 100% correct and fair. Although I think if you're this league, you want Robert Kraft's, who I think he allows people to do their job, and that's why the Patriots do well. And B, you probably want some athletes. I think of Rick Fox. I think is really into esports. Just a handful of these guys who really have a following, and are still relevant after their playing days to be pushing this, because it is the cross from the other side. It's the sports side coming into esports, which I think is still valuable. And
I won't lie, I actually do appreciate that, because I want esports to take off, and I love the ever-expanding gaming market. There's nothing I love more than being, walking down the street with Brandon, chatting about Prey or whatever, and having some dude that looks nothing like what I'd expect a gamer to look like make an offhand comment. I just love the inclusivity. So if we can get more crossover from sports fans, I think that would be great. That said, we really are just speculating at the moment, kind of throwing stuff at the wall. We'll see what of it sticks. But the Overwatch League doesn't even have an announced start date yet. It's going to be sometime this year, but we'll know more once Blizzard responds to all these, all the losses of these potential teams. And they have said they're in talks right now with a lot of team owners, both in traditional sports and esports, to try and work out any kinks in the system. So hopefully we will have good news next time we cover this, but that is where we're at right now. Next up, we have kind of an update to a story we talked about a little while ago. You guys may remember we discussed, it was probably a month and a half ago now, I'd say, how Total Biscuit and Jim Sterling were brought into the Steam offices to talk about ways to improve Steam. And a big thing that Valve wanted to talk about was improving people's understanding of how Steam serves them games. And the first step of that has been released this week. Specifically, this is the new widget that tells you reasons you might like this game. It's pretty cool. It's not the most detailed thing. It's not super duper useful, but at very least, if you're getting bombarded with a bunch of games on your front page that you're like, I don't even play this genre, why am I getting all these? Well, now you can have a little bit more insight into why that is. Specifically, they give you metrics like, you have friends that own this game. It has positive user reviews. It's recommended by curators you might follow. You have friends who have it on their wish list. It's in top sellers. That kind of stuff are all different metrics that can be used to track why Steam is recommending the game to you. There's not a whole lot more to say about it, but it's a cool new feature, and I definitely appreciate the increased transparency,
Yeah, it makes things a little easier. It's good to know where people's thoughts are coming from when they recommend things to you.
Exactly. And when we see some of the other improvements rolled out for visibility, hopefully we'll be able to do more to cull genres and games that we're not interested in from our queues.
Definitely.
Yeah. Next up, we have our last story this week. There is now, officially, a working Nintendo PlayStation out there. That's right. You guys may remember a while ago that we had covered basically that they had been at an auction, someone had come across a prototyped Nintendo PlayStation. However, it was not functional, and there was a huge kerfuffle about it. People were really excited. They were a little bummed that they couldn't get it working, but it was still a big discovery for gaming historians. That has changed a little bit here. It has been taken by Ben Heck, well-known hacker extraordinaire, and given a once-over. They replaced bad capacitors, all kinds of issues with the motherboard, and got it back up to snuff. It is now in a state that it is capable of running, which is very interesting. Unfortunately, since this is a prototype console, again, the Nintendo PlayStation, there were no games for it. Only homebrew games that people made based on concepts for the title. I don't know. This is one of those things that's just out there. What do you guys think about this? I just love this kind of story. I think it's so great.
Well, I'm super good that they made some, because it is a bit of history. Nintendo PlayStation was like this fruit of a very short-lived joint project with between Nintendo and Sony. I think Nintendo backed out, and Sony eventually generated their own console, which spurred on the PlayStation, which is IP.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's really cool to see one up close. They have some really good videos you can look up on Ben Heck's YouTube channel, but it's such a weird-looking system because it takes top-loaded cartridges, but it also takes CDs front-loaded.
Yeah, it's super weird.
I have a hot take here. I believe that there will be more of these in circulation than NES Classics when all is said and done.
The sad part is, it's like, yeah,
might be true.
Yeah, I can see it.
You're not wrong there.
It's like, yeah, this is one of the few times on the podcast where everybody agrees. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, there's
prototype console will have more market footprint than a super popular Nintendo device.
Yep.
No kidding. That said, there's not a ton to say about it. It's just pretty interesting. Since there's no games or anything that can run on it, all they've really been able to do is play back audio CDs and CD-ROM games. But they are playing around, making edits to homebrew stuff, and we're hoping that down the road we may find prototypes for something like Secret of Mana that was designed on the Nintendo PlayStation originally, but never saw the light of day, and just for gaming, museums and such down the line. Just a really cool piece of gaming history. But
it's super cool because that is what makes us here. Without that, I would not have a PlayStation.
Exactly, you're sitting right there with a PS4. It's totally cool. I love this kind of stuff, and he does have a full video on the restoration you guys can check out.
Just think of it this way: if this wouldn't exist, Horizon Zero Dawn wouldn't exist.
Exactly. There you go. Anyways, though, that's pretty much going to do it for this week's show. As I'm sure you guys can tell, this has been procedurally generated. We hope you've enjoyed listening. Please be sure to check us out on Libsyn and iTunes, where you can leave a rating or review. You can also check out my upload of the episode on my YouTube channel. That's Lesser Noob, lesser.noob N00B. If you just like to have audio on in the background and have it on YouTube, you can watch it there. You can also follow us on Twitter at PG_show to see all our latest releases. Thank you guys so much for listening, and as always, game on.